Now, with our help and your help, she's back to finish the job, not with a narrow margin, but with a thumping margin. She has very qualified priorities, and we thank her for her insight into those priorities. She's going to focus on healthcare, immigration, social justice, and economic recovery. Friends, please join me in welcoming our next congressperson, Carolyn Bourdeaux. Welcome.
Thank you, Subhash. Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for organizing this. When I first got into this race, this was literally just a couple friends sitting around a table. And I was just thinking back on that, and I hadn't even thought about it but at the time, but the South Asian community was very well represented at that table. There were two friends, one of whom, unfortunately, they've left the state. One of them has actually gone to Stanford now. But they were friends and colleagues of mine, who had worked at Georgia State at some point in time. And we all sat down. This is a very grassroots effort to try to flip this seat, Georgia 7. Lots of us just got together. We're like, we're not going to go down this way. We believe in a country that's diverse and inclusive, global in its outlook and aspirations. And we are going to put together a campaign that really reflects those values. But there's several issues in there. The first is how we address the pandemic and what we're going to do about that. And the thing that is enormously frustrating to me and to many of my friends in the medical community, many of whom actually happen to be South Asian or of South Asian background, by the way, is that we have a terrible public health response to this. We have disinvested from our public health community and programs for generations now. So when we talk about getting testing up and running, and we talk about having the contact tracing that has to come behind that. So testing is important. You have to have quick turnaround in testing, but you also have to have someone who will follow up on that and then make sure that everybody who that person came into contact with is notified that they have come into contact with someone who has COVID, and then they quarantine. And that is how you shut it down. And that's what every other developed country in the world has managed to pull off. But this country has absolutely failed to do. So before we can get our schools back open, which is, I'm a mother of an 8-year-old, I care about that an awful lot. Before we can get our economy back on its feet, we first have to get control of the disease. And I don't understand why we are not investing in getting that straightened out right away, because everything else will fall into place once we've done that. So that's sort of the bigger picture on coronavirus. But beyond that, since we have not gotten it into place, yes, we have extraordinary suffering on the ground. It is very frustrating to me that the president and the Senate and the Congress have not been able to extend the unemployment benefits to people, have not been able to support our small business community appropriately to keep them up on their feet.
How do you expand current healthcare policies to ensure that families are able to afford healthcare?
So expanding Medicaid is a really basic safety net program to make sure that everybody, when something goes wrong in your life, there is a baseline amount of healthcare and health insurance that you can get. We also, just one aside, is I worked with Senator Wyden. I used to work on his staff and worked on expanding access to public health clinics and making sure that we have that also is really sort of that safety net baseline set of healthcare that you can go in for a very reasonable price. They're federally qualified health centers. You can go in and get basic healthcare. Beyond that, though, my vision is to cover a lot of people, create an affordable option through creating a public health insurance option. And that can be either having people buy into Medicare. Everybody loves Medicare. Medicare works pretty dang well. It could be setting up a nonprofit of some sort that provides nonprofit health insurance. And what's interesting about that is that will actually probably save us money. Because right now, health insurance companies charge us extortionary rates for health insurance.
And we also know that Mr. Kemp stole the last gubernatorial elections as well. What can we do as a community to, what suggestions would you have, right, for us as a community to make sure that we get out the vote and make these the fairest elections ever?
So first thing, fight for your right to vote. Go vote, fight for it. Lots of people died for that right to vote. The least we can do is to make sure we exercise it.